Laura, do not come to me.
The 3DO, if anything, was for many ambitious software developers a vision of what the future of video games would look like. How would CD technology, in concert with advanced silicon, capable of polygon generation and texture mapping, further immerse the player beyond the simple 2D running and jumping of previous generations of console? Amongst the mounds of developers attempting to distinguish themselves from one another was Warp. If you're a regular viewer of mine, you'll know that I love Kenji Eno, who passed away about 10 years ago now. In as few words as possible, I'd like to describe him as a visionary. Eno looked beyond the present surface-level technical considerations of the current day and tried to imagine what the future looked like. The future, to Eno and Warp, would star virtual actresses who would play different roles depending on the game they were in, and the first such incarnation of this attitude would be Dee. Eno wasn't just a talented and visionary game designer, but also a gifted musician, intelligent man, and interesting person. Seen here in a preview video for D2 on the M2 adapter hardware, he's surrounded by keyboards hammering out the recognizable theme from D. It may seem that I was just gushing about Kenji Eno, but everything I just mentioned clarified into the experience of D on the 3DO. It stars Laura, who upon receiving notice that her father was just involved in a horrible mass murder in a hospital, rushes to the scene only to find herself sucked into some kind of bizarre otherworld. The music, scored by Eno, creates an ominous atmosphere as the world's first video game actress begins her premiere descent into madness. He wasn't just a competent designer, but a consummate and well-rounded artist. From the moment D starts, it seems different to a normal point-and-click or screen-based FMV adventure. It drips in atmosphere, from footfalls to ticking clocks, and the transitions between each video file is so seamless. You feel very immersed because you're never jarringly pulled out of the world by poorly compressed or abruptly edited video loops. There are some unique gameplay contrivances that D features that further help it stand out. Laura has a compact which shows her hints if the player is stuck. This can only be used a few times though. Additionally, the whole game runs on a 2-hour timer, making the experience even more tense. Peppered throughout the experience are interactive puzzles like opening drawers in certain order, cranking a handle to make numbers line up, and even action sequences like the fight with a possessed suit of armor. This part of the game is very jarring, as the entire time the player has been opening and closing things, solving puzzles and wandering around, and suddenly you're fighting, using QTE-style button presses. If you've never played D before, this comes completely out of nowhere, and is actually very exciting. One of the most impressive things D features is actual replay value, which can't be said of most FMV adventure games of this era. When I say actual replay value, I'm referring to the fact that as you play, Laura finds beetles which when interacted with fill her in on her missing memories from when she was younger. Collect all of them, and you get the whole picture. If you don't, the game will let you know when you finish that you didn't find everything, and to try again. This one little feature is really nice, and tantalizes a player to go back for another try, effectively overcoming one of the major issues I tend to have with FMV adventure games, which isn't enough in the way of incentive to return. I remember I first saw D when I was 6 years old in 1995. It's actually one of my earliest clear memories of anything video game related. I can still see the image of this magazine ad burned into my brain after all these years. While that desiccated skeleton may not be very scary now, and in fact most of the rendered elements of the game seem very basic and lacking in detail by today's standards, that one image had such an impact on me because back then it was very realistic. Standards have obviously changed, but when looking at the overall aesthetic of D, you need to set your mind chronometer to 1995. This was pretty cutting edge stuff at the time, with realistically rendered furniture, wood and stone textures combined with an ominous and atmospheric soundtrack. Some of the animation looked pretty stiff and awkward in retrospect, but for someone growing up in the mid-90s, D is the kind of thing that got under your skin and stayed with you. In D, Kenji Eno and Warp set out to do something different. This isn't the usual yawn of an FMV adventure game where you wander around incomprehensible environments, dragging a cursor around a screen, trying to find that one pixel you can click on to progress. D is about atmosphere, innovation, and a genuine attempt to craft a piece of art in the form of the next generation of what video games might look like on the new CD hardware. The world is a less interesting place without Eno, but at least we can look back on and appreciate his art all of these years later.